Well, first of all, hello everybody. I'd like to thank my very good friend Peter Holland for encouraging me to do this. This gives me the opportunity, of course, to pass on any blame or guilt or bad comments or insults directly to him. So don't blame me for any of this. This first video is really just going to be an introduction to the sort of thing that I'd like to do on future videos. What I'm doing, and available through Amazon, is a book series called A Book of Days, where I go through each day of a month, pick an event. It could be a birthday or the anniversary of some event that happened on that day, and then just see where fancy takes me from it. Each individual month is available as an ebook, and then I collect 3 months together, do some editing and a few changes, perhaps add a few drawings or photographs, and then publish 3 months in one, such as this one, which is the 3 months of winter. Now each topic is completely different. They usually reflect some particular interest of mine, but not necessarily so. Sometimes I'll choose something simply because I'm interested in finding out more about it. So although, as far as I'm aware, all the facts that I quote in the book are correct, it is very much a work of personal opinion, not simply a recitation of what happened on any particular day. Now, because it's opinion, of course, that means people will disagree, or indeed seek to stress some completely different aspect of that date or that person's life or whatever. And I purposefully, in the book, haven't included a list of contents, and the idea behind that is that for those people who choose to read a day at a time, the next day will be a complete surprise, or should be, at any rate. As I say, they cover a very wide range, so it's not academic at all. I'm not a particular expert on this. The basic idea, apart from trying to sell copies of the book on Amazon, the basic idea behind this is really to start conversations. So you might find something that you disagree with, or perhaps agree with, or something that you'd like to find out a little bit more about. So I encourage people to directly contact me through a Facebook page which is dedicated really to the book, or possibly through email, or through, perhaps, if this develops as I hope it develops, perhaps on the comments section on YouTube. If you enjoy these series, stick with them, please subscribe, and please mention them to your friends. I'll probably never ever get enough hits for something like this to make any money out of it, but that's not the primary goal. The primary goal really is to try and foster some intelligent conversation amongst people who perhaps feel that their opinions are not easily reflected on existing social platforms. So wide-ranging conversations, not necessarily particularly academic. Interests of mine do pop up more often than perhaps they should do, because, for example, I'm very interested in the life of Joseph Stalin. So there are at least 3 or 4 entries in the work I've done so far that reflect that particular interest. But this is an ongoing project. I mean, it's basically infinite in range. I can always repeat months again and again and again, as long as I'm around to do it. But let me try and give you an example of the sort of thing that pops crops up. Now, I'm not going to discuss this in any great detail today, but this example is from the month of April, and it's for the day of April the 8th. And on that day, I discuss the Declaration of Independence, the United States Declaration of Independence. Now, you probably think immediately, well, that's a strange day to be discussing the Declaration of Independence. So obviously, the day should be July the 4th. Well, the somewhat tenuous connection between the Declaration of Independence essay and April the 8th is that one of the 56 people who signed the Declaration of Independence was a certain Lewis Morris, and it was his birthday, or April the 8th. So the connection is, as I say, very, very tenuous indeed sometimes. As I say, the Lewis Morris was one of 56 people who signed the Declaration of Independence, and incidentally George Washington was not one of them. He should have been, but he was a bit busy at the time fighting the British, so couldn't get back to sign the paper. But the Declaration of Independence was drawn up by Jefferson and then submitted to a committee for editing, and it was reduced somewhat in the Jefferson's entries or comments, paragraphs about the abolition of slavery were dropped. This is perhaps a pity because of what happened later in the United States, but Jefferson himself, of course, was a slaveholder, as were more than half of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. But although I do deal with slavery in other entries, this entry for April the 8th is not about slavery, but rather concentrates on that very famous line from the Declaration: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." These are lines, of course, that probably every American school child memorizes, and they are indeed very resounding lines that have been an inspiration to generations of people, really all over the world. This passage was exactly how Jefferson wrote it, but he based his idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness on something that the English philosopher John Locke wrote in 1689 in his second treatise of government. And Locke believed that there were natural rights that every man held, and that you simply could not give away. Three examples that he gave of these natural rights were life, liberty, and property. Now, of course, you'll notice that Jefferson's version is slightly different: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And perhaps it is, to the modern era, a bit strange to include the pursuit of happiness, as if it were an invitation to really do whatever you liked in society. That as long as you were happy, you were fine. Well, there is a certain truth in that, but really what Jefferson meant, I believe, by the pursuit of happiness was not individual happiness. That happiness came from having a harmonious society. So the pursuit of happiness is not an invitation to be greedy and hedonistic, but to actively pursue a social environment in which each individual could flourish. Now, one problem with the Declaration of Independence, perhaps, and the Constitution of the United States, which followed it, is that although neither document is racist in itself, these were the idea that all men are created equal was not really applied as a natural right to all men at all. For example, when Jefferson wrote men, he meant men, not women. And these rights were not extended until after the Civil War, and then in the South with considerable reluctance to the black Americans, and many of whom, of course, at the time of the Declaration were indeed slaves. But the idea that this Declaration of Independence is logical, regardless of the fact that it wasn't applied to everybody, that it's logical is, in my opinion, also questionable. Because we hold these truths to be self-evident. Well, why are they self-evident? If they're self-evident for one white man, then surely they ought to be self-evident for a black man, or a woman, or a citizen of China, or whatever. You cannot, if these truths are self-evident, you cannot then seek to limit these truths to just one section of society. That to me sounds like complete nonsense. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. So when a man is born, he has rights that cannot, according to this, be taken from him. And three examples of these, although he doesn't give any more, he does say among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, the idea that right to life is given is laudable, and it's something that, for example, the United Nations has sought to enshrine in its Declaration of Human Rights. But if everyone, if this now should apply to everyone, then your starving child in sub-Saharan Africa has as much right to life as a child in Great Britain, Spain, where I am now, or the United States. And that simply is not true, as we can see by the incredible amount of suffering and disease that exists in societies, which could quite easily be helped. And the problem of liberty here is that everybody, probably without exception, would like to be free. But what exactly does this mean? Because surely there are really two types of freedom. One is the freedom to do something, like the freedom to say what I like, the freedom to meet other people who think the way I do, the freedom to protest, etc. This is the freedom to do something, but alongside this are freedoms from something. So in an advanced Western society, and one with a very good social security system such as Spain, then I could claim that I have a certain right to freedom from hunger or illness or poverty or something like that. But the big problem here, and it's a problem that has never successfully been resolved in the United States, and nor indeed in any other country, is that the freedom to do something and the freedom from something clash. Because your freedom to do something must have limits placed upon it. So your liberty can never be unconditional and limitless. Because, for example, I'm not free to go out and shoot somebody on the street for no reason. And there are all sorts of limits to freedom that every government, and it doesn't matter whether it's an authoritarian government, a democratic government, or somewhere in between, all governments have to try and balance the freedom froms and the freedom to, again with limitations placed upon them both by the philosophy they profess and by the resources they have to do this. Now, the United States, for example, is a country with enormous economic resources. It's a very wealthy country, and is still perhaps the most powerful country in the world, although that may not last much longer. But always in American society, for example, in any society, but I'll use the example of the United States simply because the starting point is the Declaration of Independence. All societies are in a constant battle in trying to find this balance between freedom to and freedom from. And if we look at one example in the United States, for example, the right to carry guns. Now, one section of society is saying quite loudly and with quite a lot of power and clout and influence that we should, if we like, be free to carry a gun. But there are people who say, well, no, we should be free from the danger of being shot by someone with a gun. And these two freedoms, one is positive and one is negative, these two freedoms are basically irreconcilable. And I sometimes think, when I look at the arguments for arms or against arms, when I look at some of the websites that say the gun lobby promote, it suddenly occurs to me that both sides of the argument, both groups involved in that argument, have no common ground. They're not even really talking about the same thing, because they're approaching the question from two completely opposite viewpoints. Anyway, enough for that. But that's basically will be the idea of this series of YouTube videos. I'm quite happy to see comments. Please be respectful of both others and myself. And suggestions, so forth, all welcome. and I'll post another video on another day's topic within a week or so. These won't be regularly released every Thursday afternoon. They'll appear when I have time and energy and enough subject matter to talk about something worthwhile, I think. Anyway, don't forget the book. You can easily find it on Amazon. Right. Okay, well, see you next time. Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching this.